Hey, what's up, everyone? Lexi Rafael and Michael Johnson here, and we are back for another episode of the Business Choreography podcast. And today we have a very special guest that we are interviewing, and his name is Steve Benson. Just a little bit about Steve. Steve is a CEO and founder of Badger Maps, the #1 app in the App Store for outside and field salespeople. Steve is also CEO of Badger Sales University. After receiving his MBA from Stanford, Steve joined Google, where he became Google Enterprise's top sales executive globally in 2009. In 2012, Steve founded Badger Maps for outside and field salespeople to upgrade existing CRMs with mapping, routing, and scheduling. He also hosts the Outside Sales Talk, a podcast specifically for outside salespeople, and is the president of the Sales Hall of Fame. So we're super excited to be interviewing him today, and we'll cue the theme song, and then we'll jump into the interview.
Listen, there's a lot to learn when growing and scaling your business.
That's why we created the Business Choreography podcast, where we talk about choreographing your marketing, operations, and sales into dynamic systems that increase your revenue and your impact.
We'll explore solid business principles and discuss all things that make businesses dance to success with clarity.
We'll help you figure out where the holes are in your business and what you can do to fix them. Think of us as your official business choreographers, aka your insider growth strategists.
Remember, your choreography matters. Welcome to the Business Choreography Podcast. Okay, let's bring Steve right on, and welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a party, just asking you some questions about how you've grown this awesome business that you have. We're excited to learn about your path and your journey. So.
You know, life is interesting. It throws all sorts of crazy things at us, and we have to kind of choreograph as we go. Obviously, we're business choreography, so we like to talk about that idea and that concept. Right. And so we want to hear a little bit more about how you've kind of choreographed your journey to get to this point where you have Badger Maps and all this stuff's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, a little background on us. So we were founded in 2012. So I left Google then and started the business January 2012. And we started out with just a basic product. It took us about 1.5 years to get like get something that was worthy of enterprises to put in front of their sales teams. And what we did was we basically, the earliest version just took a company's customers and put it on a map for them so that they could kind of see where everything was at on a map. And then later came the routing and the scheduling and, the different platforms like iOS and Android and then, lead generation, all the things that we do today for field sales teams. But we started out with just like a little tiny piece of that. So I guess that was the first dance step in our choreography.
I love it.
I love it. That's awesome.
Nice.
How did you make that jump from Google into doing this, and why sales in the field?
Yeah. Right. Well, so my last job at Google, and I held a couple jobs when I was there, but my last one was I was running sales into the Western U.S. for the Google Maps API, which is basically the Google Maps API is basically the way that you can take something similar to what you use Google Maps on your phone with, and it's their way of allowing people to build software with maps and other types of geographic capabilities. So I was in charge of helping companies do that. And companies might incorporate maps onto their website. They might incorporate it into a product, et cetera. But one of the things that I was running into that didn't exist, but a lot of people were asking for, they wanted Google to do it, was kind of a piece of software like Badger Maps is today. They wanted to be able to see all their customers. They wanted to connect, and different people were asking for it in different ways. Like, if they had Salesforce as their CRM, for example, they would ask for it. Yeah. We'd like to connect our Salesforce with Maps and bring Google Maps into Salesforce and be able to see our customers on a map and do the following things with them, analysis and routes and scheduling and stuff like this. And so I was kind of bumping into this concept as a pain point for executives and their sales teams. And so Google, generally doesn't build end-to-end pieces of software of that
Right.
nature, right? They like to provide the tools in this space. Like they like to provide the cloud computing, the database capabilities, stuff like that. But they don't actually provide the end-to-end. They don't generally build things like Gmail, which is an end-to-end complete solution for your email, right? Like they do it sometimes for enterprises, but they when they do something, it tends to be a really big business like email. But this is a much more niche thing, so that's not something they would do. But as I looked at it, it seemed like it was something that was worth someone doing.
Yeah.
And Badger's, not a huge business like Gmail, which is probably I don't know billions of dollars in revenue they pull in with that one. But we're a small company. We've got about 65 employees, and we do like $5 million a year in revenue, and we solve a problem for that thousands of companies have. So a lot of people use the stuff, and sometimes it's one sales rep at a company using it. Sometimes it's a big company buying it for 500 sales reps, and we can support either one.
Very cool. Why the field sales then? Did you have a background in that, or did you just decide, hey, this is a good niche to go into?
Yeah, I mean, field salespeople were the ones that had this need, right? If you're an inside salesperson, you don't care where something is on the map, right? Like you'd be selling to New York 1 minute and Hawaii the next minute.
Right.
But if you're in field sales, which tends to be industries like, think about like a medical device sales rep. That's a great example. But it's a lot of things. It could be the guy that sells tires to the tire stores, or beer to bars, or, tomatoes to Italian restaurants, or cheese to Italian restaurants. It could be lots of things. Kind of have this face-to-face relationship with, in general, it's Main Street businesses, so like a dentist office or something. And you tend to reach those businesses with field salespeople. It tends to be the most efficient way to get stuff in front of them for products that need some selling, right? It's a dentist wouldn't buy his rubber gloves necessarily from a field salesperson. There's not like a rubber glove field salesperson. Right. You'd buy that on Amazon or wherever you'd buy it online. But if the dentist is buying a laser or a new teeth cleaner or something, it's an important decision. It costs a lot of money. They want to understand things, and so that would tend to be sold with a field salesperson. So I knew a lot about this market because a lot of software gets sold to field salespeople, especially the expensive stuff. More so back when I started my career than now. Software has kind of become, I'd say it's trended towards less money per seat, and much more clear what you're getting, and free trials. A lot more like software has become easier to purchase than when I started selling software, which was 2006.
Wow.
So,
crazy.
Back then it was like you would buy I was basically selling you a CD for $1 million, and that was the way software used to be sold. And today you didn't
totally different.
You couldn't use the CD until you couldn't like try out the CD until you purchased it, and so there was a lot of risk involved, and you didn't know that the CD would work for you. You didn't know it would work in your environment. There was a lot of spin on things. Whereas today, I mean, someone that's buying a piece of software, you can always do a trial. If you can't, there's it's a red flag. You can try it out. You can kick the tires on it. You can make sure it works for you, that sort of thing. Because it's not a big upfront expense. And then you use it forever. You pay for it monthly. So the risk is really reduced, and it's a lot easier to sell, I think, today. And a lot easier to buy, a lot easier to sell, and a lot easier to buy. But anyway, my background was in field sales. And so that's how I kind of understood this space. And I'd spoken with a lot of field sales executives who wanted to understand, who wanted to solve these problems. And that's how I ended up solving a problem for field salespeople.
Wow.
Cool. We talk a lot about growth, right? And helping businesses grow, from startups to in between to, people making more revenue. And so we wanted to dig into this a little bit with you. So what did you do that allowed your business to hit like its first growth phase? Because you've been in business for a while, right? And so what was the first thing?
Well, and we've been in business for a while, but there wasn't much growth at first, right? So
Usually how it goes.
yeah, I'd have to go dig into the numbers, but like, until 2015, we really weren't making that much money a year. I mean, I think 2014 was actually our first year that we really posted some revenue, and
Cool.
and that was a lot of that. I think we did 150K outside of one deal, which was
Nice.
312,000 a year. So we really did. Actually, no, that was a one-time check. It was a 3-year deal. We got paid 3 years all at once for that 312,000. And then that's a whole story in and of itself. How to get your first big customers, but so we started out and we got our first couple of customers. They were like consulting contracts where we were, kind of building custom things. And we didn't really have the money. We bootstrapped this business. We didn't have the money to actually, build the software without any revenue coming in. So we, while we were building the initial version of this, we were also doing little consulting gigs on the side, kind of for the same people or similar people to I guess get a better feel for the market and see exactly what people wanted, and also to build the first version of it on someone else's dime.
Wow.
Okay. Very cool. And so was it like that big deal that kind of shifted it for you guys where it really took off? Or was it?
Well, the big deal kept us alive for 2014.
There you go.
So we and there were only there were 4 people at the company at that point, and I wasn't taking a salary. So really there was 3 people that, that were 3 mouths to feed, basically. So we needed that deal to kind of pay the bills in 2014, and then by 2015 we had a nice stream of income. I think we were probably doing like 400 grand a year, maybe 450 by the end of 2015. And that's when we started to be able to start hiring people, adding to the team. And we just kept growing a little more, then adding another person to the team, growing a little more, adding another person to the team.
It's so helpful. I appreciate you sharing that, because there's so many owner operators out there that are kind of feel like they're on their own, and they don't know what's normal or what everybody else is doing. And so it's really great to hear that and be able to share that, I think, with others that are kind of going through similar things. What's been one of the hardest things that you've experienced and overcame in business that you could share with people like them?
I think some of the hardest stuff is with respect to growing a company of this nature is just figuring out where you can invest and when. Getting access to capital, loans or equity. I think it's a time consuming process, and not one that necessarily adds value to your business, but one that you have to do to keep it going. I think that's been always a challenge, and just being able to get insight and predictability into how much money is coming next year, and therefore who can I hire and when, or where can I spend money and when. And if, in bad times, like when COVID hit, we lost 40% of our customers, right? Because they're field sales teams. And so field salespeople, were just getting laid off left and right in, June of 2020. And companies that had a big distribution or field sales model, or just they were just, I guess, a lot of companies in regardless of the sales model, a lot of them were going out of business. But our customers, especially, it was an especially bad group of people to be servicing, because they service Main Street businesses. And so, if you're selling to, if you're doing business with Goldman Sachs, and Coca-Cola, they were here before the pandemic. The pandemic didn't affect them nearly as much as if it was like, this boutique on Main Street in Kansas, right? And our customers sell to that boutique in Main Street in Kansas.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Crazy.
I'm trying to think of cities in Kansas. Wichita.
Wichita.
What is in Kansas? Right in the middle of the country there. That's kind of, that was a challenge. So I guess that balancing, to answer your question, it's that the balancing of where am I at right now, and making those adjustments to stay on that balance beam, on how much can I spend versus how much am I making, and keeping that in balance.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Constant battle, right? Constant battle for a lot of people. And is that like still a thing, or was that like back in the day?
I mean, I think if you're bootstrapped, that's always a thing. And even if
Yeah.
you're not bootstrapped, you should pretend it's a thing, because that's how a lot of companies that are VC backed get themselves in big trouble, right? Because they, it's like, oh, well, I've got $10 million in the bank, so I might as well ramp up spending by 5, without without a lot of thought to, well, when will I be bringing in money? When will I be bringing in $5 million a year? How long will it take me if I spend this 5 to cover that?
Right.
Because this VC money doesn't last forever.
Right.
So I think that's always a challenge in any business. But I think the faster you're growing and changing, the more of a challenge that is.
Right.
For sure. Okay, let's dig into some of the strategies. We love to talk about strategy, and so let's dig into some of your greatest sales strategies along the way. What have you done in terms of sales to really make this thing come to life?
Sure.
And to grow, right?
Yeah. Well, and I hear a little echo. I think maybe if you turn me down a little, your mic wouldn't pick it up.
Thanks.
I've been podcasting for years, so I feel your pains.
It happens, right?
So sales strategies, I guess, it really depends on where the business is at in its life cycle, and kind of, how you're going to market, what your strategy is to go into the market. So I guess,
Right.
There's marketing strategies, and there's 10 of those that we've employed over the years. I mean, I guess we are mostly an inbound company, so we mostly have people coming to us, and then we service them, which is less expensive per lead, but the leads on average have a lower probability of closing than if you're doing more of an outbound strategy to exactly the right people, right? So your sales team ends up spinning its wheels a bit. So we get about 700 new trial signups a week, and that's been pretty steady for a while. It's been challenging to move the needle a lot on that, but those come from people finding us on the web when they search for how do I solve. They'll describe one of the problems we solve, and they'll Google will direct them towards us. We run a bunch of Google ads. I have my podcast, which is specifically for field salespeople, which is super helpful, right? Like,
Right.
It's a really valuable thing anyone can do is think about, well, who is the exact group of people that I service, and create great content for that group of people. And the podcast has been surprisingly effective at doing that. So, anyone can steal this strategy from me. And we just, I reach out to sales thought leaders, and, basically have them come on and teach the thing that they're great at for field salespeople through the lens of knowing, oh, well, the people listening to this are field salespeople. It's called, and the listeners know exactly what they're getting, because it's called outside sales talk. So it's clearly for outside salespeople.
Right.
And that's been super helpful. And I couldn't create that content myself, right? Like, you got to bring on people that are really good at it, like real, these sales thought leaders, that this is their job, right? And they're happy to do it because it gets the word out for them.
Sure.
Their services tend to be consulting or some, if you're an expert in referral selling, it's great to have them come on and, teach referral selling for field salespeople, for example, or closing, or whatever area your area of expertise is. Referrals have been another huge source of traffic for us. And I think that's one of the cheapest and best sources of traffic. If you really solve a problem and really solve it well, and your customers are really happy, they are far more likely to, purchase your product, and to have their friends purchase your product. So, and the one great thing about selling to salespeople is they're great at communicating, right? They communicate with people really effectively. And so they tend to spread the word for us in a lot of ways.
Wow. That's great. I mean, referrals are such a great way to go. Obviously, we call that the promised land, right? Anytime you can
Yeah.
get your referrals higher than your churn, man, there's some really great things that can come from it, right?
And it's just all about having, if people are really happy with this, if you do what you say you do and you do it really well,
Right.
if there are a lot of people that need it, and they tend to know each other, right? So they
Right.
tend to tell each other about it.
That's great. That's great.
Totally. Okay, so what were two of your best hires as you've been going along this journey?
That's a tough question. That I think is the best hires, the most important hires, the one you do early in a company's history, right?
Yeah.
They're the most important hires you make because employee number 50, they have just a smaller impact on the business than employee number 5 by an order of magnitude probably. And so
Yeah.
the ones up front are super important. Making the right choices there is really, really, and people, if you make a mistake early on, it can be catastrophic. A mistake at your 501st employee, if it doesn't work out, you can replace them. You'll figure it out and you can replace them. But if your mistake is employee number 5, it can really impact the business negatively. So early on, the first hire I made was someone to actually run the engineering of the product, right? So
Right.
creating the thing, and that was a really fantastic hire. He's still with the company,
Wow.
and he's really had his hand in I mean, he knows where all the bodies in the product are buried. He can, it's hiring someone who has the breadth of understanding of different elements of engineering, but also
Right.
the vision to create a new product. Because I don't have that vision, right? Like I can say, oh, well, here's what I want it to look like, but I can't say, and so we should use a database structured like this. Because I'm not technical, right? My background's on the business side. So that was a really important hire. That first engineering hire. The first product hire, which was the hire after that, was equally important. And that person did product and kind of all the technical elements of marketing and the website, and was kind of a catch-all. And he was with the company probably for 7 years ish, and he just a key hire, and really had put his fingerprints all over the product and what it ended up looking like. Third hire was a guy that was kind of like a general business hire, help scale sales, marketing, interact, customer success, and he was also a really key hire. And as I go through them, I guess all these first hires were really, really important.
Right.
The fourth hire is still with the company, and she was customer facing and still is, and kind of interacting with the customers, helping them be successful with the product. I think it's really important to over-invest in your early customers and just kind of holding their hands, because there's going to be rough spots in the product, and implementation is hard, and it's not as smooth as you'd want it to be on how to use the things. You really need someone to like train and help hold the customer's hand and make sure they're being successful with the product, and then and gathering feedback from them and empowering that person to communicate the feedback around the organization is all really important. So yeah, I'd say those 4 first hires were really, really important, and I didn't have any whiffs on those. They all went really well. So
Yeah, it sounds like you kind of went through unscathed. I mean, that's seems pretty amazing, and says a lot about your ability to read your people and the people that you needed to get on board. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I pay a lot less attention to hiring now, obviously, because it's spread out so much more, and you got to let people hire for their own team, right, and make the final decision. If you're going to hold, your VP of sales accountable for their number, like they have to be the ones making the decisions around hiring. But yeah, it's really those early hires are, you really have to put time and effort, and one of the primary jobs of a CEO in an early stage company is is salesperson, and probably the second most important is head recruiter.
Right.
Totally.
Makes sense.
Cool. Well, we want to make sure that people are able to find you and connect with you. And so what are the best places for them to connect with you?
The best place to find me and kind of learn more about me is probably LinkedIn. So
Cool.
if you just search Steve Benson, Badger Maps, you'll find me right away. You can't just Google me because there's a serial killer named Steve Benson.
Oh, no.
Oh my goodness.
He's already dead, but he was a very famous serial killer. But he's an old man, or was an old man when he died. So, it's not the same guy, but
Wow.
makes it hard to Google me. So
Yeah, that's a little rough.
But his LinkedIn presence is much, much weaker than mine. So
I would imagine.
you'll find me if you look for me on LinkedIn.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, we'll definitely send them that way. And of course, you've got badgermapping.com as well, right?
Yeah. If you're interested, if you've got a field sales team or interested in what we're doing or what it looks like, that's the best place to learn about that is badgermapping.com.
Awesome. Well, great. We've got that on the screen for those of you that are watching video. If not, we'll keep all those links in the description below.
For sure.
And make sure that you can connect with Steve and Badger Mapping. And gosh, we appreciate so much that you take the time out of your day. I know you're doing a lot of crazy, busy things, and we appreciate you talking to everybody out there that is building their business and working on getting better and taking to the next level. This was so insightful and so helpful, and we're so grateful that you could join us today.
Absolutely. I'm glad I could show up, and thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us today.
Want more business choreography?
Check out our website at bizchoreo.com to find out more.
And find out how the choreography for your marketing, operations, and sales can raise your revenue and create more impact.
Remember, every business needs choreography.